In this section, we are going to get into the physical properties of the fabrics. If we take a closer look under the Physical Properties tab in the Property Editor, we can see that there is a Presets tab with a list of basic fabrics. You can use these to very quickly and easily switch fabric properties to get an idea of how your 3D garment drapes with different fabric types. In the list and in front of each fabric type is a letter, and these represent different categories of fabrics. The A stands for animation and is a specialty fabric that is used specifically to render the waistband in the Clo 3D animation. The D stands for draft and have properties that may not be 100% accurate to real-life fabrics in terms of actual numbers, but have been optimized to bring you a faster simulation speed to test out different fabric types. The R stands for real physical property and have same physical properties as its real-life counterparts. Although they are able to accurately render the drape of each fabric, they are also heavier files and can slow down the simulation speed significantly. We recommend that you switch over to these fabric types after your garment is somewhat finalized. The last initial, S, stands for subsidiary material and denotes properties that have been assigned to trims and accessories such as buttons, zippers, shoulder pads, and leather belts. You can use these presets, but you can also begin to manipulate specific attributes of the fabrics under the Details tab. For each attribute, there are two different tabs with different value scales. The actual value of these attributes, such as grams per square millimeter, are shown in the second of these tabs, but they are very specific and often involve one-to-many zeros. Therefore, the first tab represents these attributes as a percentage value from 0 to 99. The percentages are not divided equally, but 0 to 60 represents frequently used values of each attribute, and the rest is compressed into the 60 to 99% range. The attributes include weft, warp, and shear strength, as well as bending, buckling, internal damping, and density. The weft, warp, and shear strength represent the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal strengths of the fabric weave respectively. If we increase the value of the weft strength, you can see that the fabric, and therefore the garment, compresses in width. If we increase the value of the warp, the fabric becomes more compact in length. Keep in mind that each of these properties are measured in relation to the position of the patterns in the 2D pattern window, so make sure that your grain lines are aligned with the vertical axis of the 2D pattern window. The bending strength represents the overall bendability or stiffness of a fabric, and you can increase the value to render fabrics such as denim or heavier leathers, and decrease it to render softer fabrics that drape nicely, like silk or jersey. The buckling of the fabric is a length ratio that represents the length at which the fabric begins to buckle or bend. A ratio closer to 100 would render fabrics that, when draped, bend immediately, like silks and jerseys. A value closer to 0 would represent fabrics that bend over a longer length, such as denims and heavy leathers. The internal damping attribute represents the frequency of oscillations in a fabric when it is moving. When creating garment animations, there may be situations where the fabric seems to move too much or too slow, being fluttery or rubbery to the point that it looks unrealistic. In these cases, we can increase the internal damping value to make it closer to how a garment would move in real life. However, this attribute is specific to movement, so it will not make any visible changes to the garment in the 3D avatar window. And last but not least, the density represents the fabric's weight in grams per square millimeters. Keep in mind that all these detail attributes affect each other and the overall rendering of the fabric. As a rule of thumb, we usually give the same value to the weft, warp, shear, and density, and then control the bending and buckling values individually. Beneath the Details tab, under Etc., You can control the fabric shrinkage if you have the values available. They are represented by a percentage, with the value of 1 being 100 and therefore representing no shrinkage in fabric. If we change the value to 0.8 for the weft shrinkage, you can see that the garment shrinks in width. The same applies when we change the value for the warp shrinkage.